What is up, guys? It's your boy GRC coming at you live every single day at 11 a.m. Eastern. And I hope everyone is doing incredible. Crypto in the morning. Today, we're talking about Richard Hart, Zen Crypto, potential problems with Zen Crypto. And obviously, we're going to be talking about both sides of both things. And we have a special guest. This is a guest I've had on the show a lot. We clash heads sometimes, but it's usually me just being ignorant and wanting to talk because I need answers. And I know these guys know a lot. And I know these guys know a lot more than me, frankly, in a lot of avenues. And that's why I have Sam on the show too. Like, Sam has a lot of life experience. Buck has a lot of life experience. They've done a lot of things. And I want to be the dumbest guy in every room that I'm in. Pretty much at this point in my life. That is what I want. And I want to know that I don't know everything, guys. And I do make mistakes all the time. And I don't want you to think that just because I'm saying something that it's right, because that's ridiculous. We are here to have open-minded, unbiased conversations about DeFi and cryptocurrency. And we have Buck, famous.io, fiat.io. And he's got a little sauce, a little extra sauce for us today, which I'm excited about. And guys, I have been on vacation for a little while. I'm just coming back. So if I'm a little lacking on the detail, just bear with me. Now, before we get started, I want to play one video from my man's Richard Hart. And I had it pulled up and then it disappeared. Oh no, I got it. Damn it, guys. I messed that up so bad. Anyway, we're going to play Crypto in the Morning song because my tab just exploded, and I guess it's not sitting there anymore. So, guys, Crypto in the Morning live every single day at 11 a.m. Eastern. Let's get it going. I want to see biceps in the chat.
You already know what time it is.
Crypto in the morning.
Crypto in the morning.
Crypto in the morning.
Waiting on phone.
Crypto in the morning. Crypto in the morning.
Ready to take notes.
Crypto in the morning.
Crypto in the morning.
Crypto in the morning.
Waiting on phone.
Crypto in the morning. Crypto in the morning.
Ready to take notes.
Smoking no blunt on my way to the gym. 11 a.m. and I'm already tuned in. Got me some hacks and I'm making a stake. Got me some heads on, I'm making it rain. Pay me some maxi and that's just in case. Jim Reddit sent me to show you the way.
DeFi Pro. Yeah.
Crypto in the morning.
Crypto in the morning.
Crypto in the morning.
Waiting on phone.
Crypto in the morning. Crypto in the morning.
Ready to take notes.
Crypto in the morning.
Crypto in the morning.
Crypto in the morning.
Waiting on phone.
Crypto in the morning. Crypto in the morning.
Ready to take notes.
Discipline is way better than motivation. Sometimes motivation's there, sometimes it's not. Discipline is always there for you. The hard thing about discipline is that it's like a muscle. You have to train it. In order to train a muscle, you need to put it against a weight that it's not used to lifting, right? So it has to grow and respond to it. So if you want to develop your discipline, then you need to do the same things for it and give it something to challenge against that you would for your muscles. So one thing that I like to do is realize that the most gains that you're going to make are on the last rep. It's at the point when you want to stop that you're actually getting the gains and getting the benefits of pushing through and building your discipline muscle. And once you get used to using discipline in one place, it actually teaches you and allows you to use it in other places. So if you're really good at turning down, say, cigarettes, then you could be good at turning down games. Then you could be good at turning down cake, whatever your thing is, right?
What's up, guys? What's up, Buck? GRC, how you guys doing? Why doesn't he still do content like that? That was the first question I wanted to ask. Why doesn't Richard Hart still do content like that? Because that's motivating and gets people to start to think and take actions in their own life, right? There's plenty of people who he's like, oh, it doesn't work. But there's plenty of successful people out there who talk like that, who are very successful, right? And there's tons of people who consume their content.
Well, I pray that everyone goes through their ups and downs in life and nobody's perfect. And I think that he was under the impression that maybe that just didn't scale the way he wanted to, but I totally agree with Sam, of course. I mean, come on, that shit pumps me all the way up. And that's why I got into crypto personally. That's why I learned about inflation, liquidity providing, how to earn passive income daily. Because of stuff like that, Sam, it got guys like me who aligned with that message. But anyway, see, Buck. First of all, good morning, Sam. Good morning, Buck. I hope you're doing great this morning.
Are you there,
Good
Buck?
morning, gentlemen.
How are you today, bro?
I'm doing well. It's 3 a.m. where I am, so I got up bright and early to speak to you guys, and I feel pretty good, all things considered.
Thank you for.
I wanted to ask one question, and I'm going to try to keep my speaking to a minimum. Sam's a bit under the weather, so maybe we'll just have a nice buckathon. But I wanted to ask you one question. I know you enough to know that you're wealthy and you live in Sydney and you can maybe have many business ventures. Why do you support Richard Hart? And I'm assuming that you support Richard Hart.
Yeah, sure. So I think I'm somebody that looks at the world with a fairly open mind, and what I always liked about Richard is that he and I have similar values that aligned us. That's kind of that clip you saw. I've seen it before. I remember it quite well. It's one of the early ones from when he first started doing the YouTube stuff back in 2017, and I found him pretty early on in that period during that Bitcoin bull market. So I think he and I always kind of had similar worldviews. We're both people that aren't afraid to offend people if we think we're right. There's a very good question you can ask somebody in a job interview, which is, would you rather be liked or would you rather be right? And most people have a pretty clear inclination one way or the other. And Richard and I are both the kind of disagreeable type of people that would rather be right than liked. That lends itself well to a world where sometimes the truth is actually a pretty unpopular thing to say, and we lived through a bit of that, I think, the last couple of years with COVID and whatnot, and I think most people in the Hex community are kind of in that camp as well. That can lead to you being sort of ostracized from polite society at certain points and whatnot. But I think that seeking that kind of truth and the integrity that Richard often shows, not all of the time, but often shows about things that are maybe not so popular, which are his deeply held convictions. So I think that's one thing that's always aligned us. Another thing that aligns us is maybe less philosophical, but it's just, I was an early investor into Hex, and I've got a decent position in it and always will probably. There's this concept of being too big to sell. And I probably fall in that camp to an extent, as do many people that are, from early Bitcoin or early whatever. You get in a position where you kind of have to push this thing forward, or else it'll die on you, right? So it's called enlightened self-interest, and go for it.
What do you think about that? Given, I think you mentioned your backgrounds in finance and stuff from a diversification standpoint.
Yeah, so it's interesting. The longer you're in investment, Sam, and you guys all probably already know this, but when you do have big wins, you end up being in a position where you become over-concentrated, right? And it's something that people don't talk enough about in crypto. Oftentimes they want you to get cultish. They want you to get tribal. Put all your money into Hex, or put all your money into Shiba, put all your money into the Zen, whatever it is. You should not listen to those people ever. You should always try to diversify. You should always be looking for exits when you have things that have done very well. That's the reality. The only free lunch in investment is diversification. Right. So, and you don't have to, this isn't, my advice. There's a guy that won a Nobel Prize named Harry Markowitz. that Sam knows very well, I'm sure already. He basically came up with modern portfolio theory and proved this with math. But it's very true because you never know what's going to happen to your investment. And if you're all in, you will potentially risk losing everything. And there's no reason to be all in, right? But sometimes you inevitably get over concentrated. If you're a founder of something, like a business or a crypto or whatever, it's likely that you'll become over concentrated in that business. So, that's why you would go to a private banker, Goldman Sachs or Credit Suisse or whatever, and say, hey, look at me. I'm Jim Rat. I've started a men's product business and I'm a millionaire now. How do I get diversified? And that's their job, is literally to sell you other products and to figure out interesting ways to get your risk spread out from, that one thing that you own too much of. So
are you doing anything on that front for yourself and your own portfolio, given that I would assume you're super lopsided right now for Hex versus like other things you hold?
Yeah. So, a big part of why we created Fiat and Fame, which are Aave and GMX forexes respectively, is to provide derivatives and hedging solutions for people like myself. Right. So I now have the ability to basically, I don't want to use fancy terms, sorry, but I have the ability to basically nullify the risk, hedge the risk in my portfolio using these protocols. Right. So if I think Hex is too expensive, I can just put a short on it, and that offsets my my actual core position. Right. So that's one thing. The other thing I can do is just reduce some of my other holdings elsewhere. Most crypto trades together. There's this concept called beta, which Sam knows well from the CFA, basically you're not missing out on too much. If you own a Hex, despite whatever the Hart's Law people say, it's going to trade relatively close to most other crypto, and especially anything connected to Ethereum. So if you have a big win with Shiba or Hex or whatever, just sell some of your Ethereum, or put a short on. So those are things you can do.
And I'm not super rich, guys, believe it or not. Could you imagine a YouTube every day and I'm not super rich? I couldn't imagine. But I'm just saying, in general, I like to be as honest as I can in my situation. And Richard put so many, I understood every word Buck said when he was talking about slippage, diversification, all of that stuff. And I'm not in the position where I really needed to do much of that. And Richard, I have notes and notes and notes of how to take money out in large portions through 100 different avenues. Why? Why do I know these things? Because Richard was fair enough at the time to tell us all his little secrets, whether we needed them or not. And some of us were willing to listen. And I know now how to put in limit orders. I know now that the 40%, that inflation will get printed out until the dollar goes to zero. I didn't know any of these things when I was climbing cell towers. I knew none of these things. I was working 24 hours a day trying to make it. And he said, "Oh, kid, you'll never outpace that shit." And I quit. All of it. I quit. And it's really awesome that he put some of those facts out there. And I don't even really think he had to. But I want to ask the next trigger question is, do you think Zen is a scam token?
Go ahead, Sam.
That's for you, Buck. He was
that's right. I was just dodging the question. No. Is Zen a scam?
I don't think the price has any. I don't think the price is going to go up, but I don't think it's a scam. Very short.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say I'll give you my kind of 30,000 foot view of what Jack is doing. My great skill is looking holistically at things. I'm not a very good bottom up thinker. I'm a good top down thinker. Can you guys hear me?
Yes. Do you want to explain for people what that means?
Yeah, well, sorry. I just want to make sure you guys could hear me. So in investment processes, there's usually a top-down process and a bottom-up process. The top-down is looking at the big picture of what's happening. So in the investment world, that could be the kind of macroeconomic environment. So what's happening with the economy, what's Putin doing, how is that all connected, right? And then the bottom up is going to be the individual security analysis. So what is this stock going to do versus this stock, right? And you want to have both processes typically in the investment world. But most people have different personalities that lend themselves to kind of one or the other. So I'm more of a top-down thinker in general. I don't know the nuances of Zen very well, right? I should say that. I don't know what he's doing exactly with, the batch minting and the Zen NFTs and all that stuff. But holistically, what I think Jack is doing is basically using you guys to onboard lots and lots of people, right? And the whole thing is basically a bit of a, I don't want to say scam, but it's an exercise in client acquisition across many different chains. It's not something that's actually investable, in my opinion. And he's sort of created a system where you guys make money as minters by basically ripping the face off of the people you sell the things that you mint for free effectively to kind of unwitting people on exchanges or wherever. But
is that any different than like Hex? You just sell to the next dumb person, right? Who's willing to buy what you're selling.
Well,
years
no. I think when you buy Hex, you're actually expecting it's going to go up in value, right? And if you're selling to somebody, in the back of your mind, you're thinking there's a reasonable chance this thing is going up, right? Whereas with Zen, as you said, so I get to use your words, Sam. We're both pretty confident Zen is going to go down in value over time. Right. And Jack has basically been telling us this from the beginning. He's, joking 18 zeros. It's not really a joke. He does expect it to go down. We did expect it to go down. Right. But what he's doing more importantly is he's just getting as many users as possible with a variety of different tokens, schemes, things like, the NFTs, or there's a reflection token called Nex. And all that is meant to do is basically just to get him numbers. So he's like one of these teenage influencers trying to bootstrap a community as fast as possible. Okay, so why is he doing that? Right? The reason he's doing that is because he has, on the other side, a lot of connections, a decent pedigree, having worked at Google and done entrepreneurial things, startups that he succeeded in and failed in. And he has very good connections across Silicon Valley, but he doesn't have influence with a community or anything like that. So this whole thing has basically been about getting you guys on board. And now, what you're going to see is that he's now going to go do the normal kind of Silicon Valley style startup, right? Now that he can say that he's got a community behind him. But you guys have been in the weeds of all these little things that he's creating, trying to figure them out and how to game them and how to make money off of them. And what you're going to find is they're probably not that fruitful or useful. But that was never their point. Their point was just to get you to follow him.
And I want to open this up. Thank you so much, Buck. And I wanted to open this up to say, Richard got guys like me to get into crypto, and you can pretty much say the same things about Zen as you can about Hex, except there's this one thing about Hex. I remember Richard before it launched saying Hex was designed to do a 10,000x in under 2 years. And he said that before it launched. And he said that as it was launching. And I think Richard had the nuance, insight, I call it degenomics. I think Richard is one of the smartest guys when it comes to the fine-tuned points in crypto, because he cares and he was there and that's how he lives his life. He's a crypto guy. And for him to actually pull that off and to have understanding, whether it's manipulation or not, he was understanding the task at hand, I think. I think he understood what he needed to do. And I remember when Richard always mentioned the walled garden. He said, everyone's going to try to come in here and steal money. And everyone's going to try to come in here and replicate the community. And we don't need VCs. And we don't want VCs, is what he was kind of saying at the time. I don't know exactly all of that nuance, but he was saying, I don't need these guys. We don't need these guys. This is for the average user. This is for the normal people. And Hex is traded all on chain. One thing I noticed about Zen right off the jump is that it was all over every centralized exchange, right? Immediately, which makes guys like, what am I going to do? Well, how do I know what's going on? I don't anymore. So I think it's important I think Richard aligns with guys like me more than maybe Jack does. And I think that Richard made a lot of money before crypto. And Richard also let me know years ago that if I had liquid bags and I was a normal dude with emotions, I would lose all of it. All of it. And he aligned me with some of these facts. And it's changed my investing strategies forever. And I don't want everyone to think I'm hating on Zen. I'm really not. But there was guys in my DMs that are friends with me that are extremely smart saying, this is a VC play. Months ago. They said it's a VC play. He's going to get, and they said, I've seen this a million times. Silicon Valley dudes come in, this, that, and the other. I had no idea what they were talking about, bro. I don't know shit about Silicon Valley. I don't know shit about VCs. I don't know any of that stuff. But what I do know is that every normal user that leaves Hex won't eat slippage and will have a normal, good experience with it. And he just armed a lot of us with the facts that I don't even think anyone really needed to arm anyone with, to be quite frank. But I'm going to just let that go. I don't remember exactly what I was saying. Sorry, guys.
When I think about what is happening, right, it is acquisition of users, but there's a point there where you have a network of the community that is growing at such a rate for a long enough period of time. And if you're able to sustain that, you can create something that is much larger than that, whether it is with Zen or it's something separate from Zen, right? And the growth of what Jack is doing is what's interesting to me, because when you don't see like growth that quickly in terms of users very often. And when you see that kind of thing, it's like, oh shit, something's happening right here. Just like how you guys probably experienced this with Hex. I didn't, right? I've just seen a 90% drop on it. I haven't seen anything else on it, right? Where the number of users joining Zen is interesting to like think about, right? Because if you were to say contrast this with say Amazon, that just kept losing money and kept losing money and kept losing money and kept losing money and kept losing money, right? Year after year after year. But they were able to continue to grow at 20 to 40% per year, right? And that would be slow in cryptos. But think about that from a Zen standpoint. I don't know what will happen with it, right? Like the tokenomics of Zen are not super great because it's inflationary at this moment, right? But like, I'm like, if he can continue to grow and acquire new users at this clip or faster, whatever, if he wants to do fucking shit with VC, cool. Like, but if you can continue to increase or maintain this growth rate, like you can build something stupid. And I know that that's possible. I don't know where the end play is or how this plays out, but it is definitely interesting. Where Richard, if you contrast this with Richard, right, he pays attention to something else and he's got a goal involved, right, with what his thinking is. He understood crypto, which Jack, I don't think, understood to the same degree as Richard. And he designed it specifically to try to get the price to go up so that he can help himself, right? Like there's a big difference in like their goals involved in there or whatever. Buck, what do you think about the growth of, say, Zen in terms of the network growing and the number of users growing? And if Jack is able to continue that, right? Because that could be something very interesting, independent of the price of what Zen does. If he's able to continue to grow that network, he can parlay that into something else.
Yeah, thank you for that. So I like to FUD Zen publicly, and I've been doing so since it launched. But I enjoy talking to Jack quite a bit, and I do talk to him quite a bit. And very early on, I looked at Zen and I said, this doesn't make sense as an investment, and I don't think it ever will. And I said to Jack, is this the hors d'oeuvre or is this the main? And he said, it's just the hors d'oeuvre. And I said this to him in Russian, by the way. And so I kind of understood pretty well, because I'm not the kind of person like the people in your chat who are talking shit about me, that kind of gets bedded down in the detail. I just looked at the thing holistically and knew it didn't make any sense. But what you have with Jack is a very different business model than Richard. And that's okay. The different business models work. With Richard, you're looking at more of like a Singapore business model. There's sort of a central entity in control of Hex and Pulse, and it's not total freedom. But you have to go with the dictator, the benevolent dictator, if you will, with the kind of Richard Hart ecosystem. And that can work. With Jack, you're now actually beginning to see what his actual goal is. Now that he's sort of made you guys jump through a bunch of hoops for the past few months, and his actual goal is to go raise a bunch of money and put together a bunch of Google VCs, ex-Google VCs, and other wealthy people, hire an army of engineers, and create his own L1, which is going to be called X1. And that's a perfectly interesting, lofty goal. And he's an interesting guy to do that. And he has a decent pedigree. And he's going to do it legally. He's going to have a angel investing round where accredited investors like myself can participate in it. So that's kind of a pretty run-of-the-mill, but definitely interesting investment opportunity that we can all look at. And attached to that, he's basically bolted on a bunch of weird people who are his following, which consist of quite a few Hexicans and former Hexicans, but also people from other parts of the world. And you guys are going to be lucky enough to get a piece of that as participants in all of his other odd things that he created that have no value really long term, but he can basically just bolt you onto this L1. So that gives him the community as well as everything that he already has, which is decent connections, a bit of programming know-how, engineering know-how, I think that's actually compelling as a starting point, right? They're neither one of them necessarily are going to be successful, but I would also add that this is probably what's more interesting. Is that this is a huge opportunity for people in Hex. People don't realize that, but you can think of the two things as being very different business models, but that they're going to both share a lot of cultural similarities, much in the same way that Singapore and mainland China interact with each other, and Singapore serves as a conduit for mainland China. X1 can serve as a conduit for Pulse Chain, and vice versa, because we're going to have a lot of shared DNA across both of them. There's always going to be a Hexican in the room when you go into a Zen chat. They're going to be familiar with Pulse Chain no matter what. And the nice thing is, because Richard does sort of have this benign dictatorship model for Pulse Chain, and he has his reasons for that, which I won't go into now. But it means that he's constantly not going to have the blessing of the rest of polite society in crypto. He's probably not going to have the exchanges on his side. He probably won't have Chainlink on his side, at least for a while, right? But this X1 thing can actually be a very nice tool in a sense, providing us those things indirectly. And if we build a very wide highway between X1 and Pulse Chain, that can actually be super beneficial to the Hexican community, as well as the X1 community. One problem that Jack has is that his user base is fundamentally poor. Most of the people that are in Zen right now are the guys that got wrecked in the last 12 months, either on Hex or other things. Whereas there are actually a lot of wealthy people in Hex. A lot of us are people that were in Bitcoin early, right? So a lot of your sharks are these type of people. And I can speak to that as someone who's run 2 sacrifices. So I have a pretty good understanding of the user base. So there's a tremendous opportunity there. And then the biggest opportunity is for guys like myself, who can straddle both universes quite easily and provide protocols to both communities, and be an early mover, first mover in both communities. That's the mother of all opportunities in this. So, and then for me, we talked about diversification earlier. This is a wonderful way for me to diversify my founder risk. And I do love to see the interplay of Jack making Richard competitive again. It's quite a welcome thing, isn't it? You know, suddenly we're getting little updates from Richard because he wants to show, Jack that, he can do this as well. And Jack, I think, is almost toying with Richard, saying, "Oh, I'm going to do, testnet in 30 days. Where's your testnet, Richard?" Right? So I actually sort of welcome this sort of competition. It's good to see founders working hard and trying to compete, in a sense, for your attention. And
I wanted to ask you, Buck, about a couple of things that you mentioned. And you said, like, there's a lot of people that are poor, is the word you used for in the Zen community, right? Well,
yeah.
at the same time, there's a lot of similarities, right? Because there's the same ideals, like having immutable code, principles of crypto, effectively the same exact thing as Hex, except for that's super centralized versus, say, something with Zen, right? And so what I see this happening, and then I want to talk about the adoption piece and ask you what your thoughts are on this. If you bring together a lot of like-minded people that understand what real crypto is, in the sense that it is immutable, there's fair distribution to it, there's not one person controlling all of the crypto, right? And you bring these people together in 14 different communities, right? People in Avalanche don't know dick about fucking Hex, right? And the same thing goes with Phantom and all these other places that Zen have been launched. But in every single one of those places, there are intelligent people who, whether they have money or they don't have money, because the people who don't have money are the ones who actually create the revolution. It's not the people with the money. The people with money are not the people who create the revolution, right? It's the masses that go through and create this. And you're pulling together these intelligent people that all believe in the same type of thing on 14 different networks that can all be used to funnel in to X1 versus, like you mentioned, right? There's a lot of headwind for Pulse. It's just literally a copy of Ethereum. You can't beat Ethereum in this game. Like, if you try to live my life better than me, like, fuck yourself, right? Like, you just can't do it. Same thing for me. Like, it's your life. You can't live it better. So when you look at Ethereum and you just look at the copycats around here, you're like, okay, cool. Inevitably, Ethereum is going to win. They have this giant network effect. There's also pushback because people don't care for Richard's style and the centralized ownership of PulseX and Pulse and Hex in this case. So I see that as potentially being headwind for adoption over there, right? Because on the other side, if you get all these poor people, as you call them, right, together, they're going to get their other poor friends, and you need adoption. And that's the actual name of the game, right?
Yeah. So absolutely, he's got his strategy to onboard lots of people, and I think that's working, and you can see that. And but yeah, Jack does understand that you need wealthy people too, and that's why he's going to go to the VCs now. So you need both, right? If you want a revolution, Sam, yeah, you need to have soldiers digging ditches in the trenches for you. And we've got young, strong guys like Jim Rat here to do that for us. But Jack's also going to go to the rich guys who are old and fat, and have all the cash. And I think he should do that. I think that's actually very good. And I want more people like that involved in Zen. But the other great thing about this is it's a huge opportunity for people on Pulse Chain as well, because we're going to vampire the hell out of X1 as well on Pulse Chain, right? Now, Pulse Chain has its advantages, Sam. They're not immediately clear, and I don't really want to talk too much about them. But there are advantages to this sort of benign dictator model, and we're not really seeing them at the moment, but I suspect we'll see them again in the future. And just like that benign dictator model works in certain countries like Dubai or Singapore, I think they will work again for us in Pulse Chain. So I actually see a bit of a yin and a yang because what you said that actually unites them is that there are similar values. I do think Jack and Richard actually have a lot of shared values. And the two communities probably have a lot of the shared values. There's a little bit of natural skepticism about the system and the man and all this stuff in both of them. Jack, I don't think is a particularly big lefty Silicon Valley type guy, right? Richard definitely isn't either, right? They both share a lot of libertarian ideals, but Jack seems to be somebody that also knows how to work with those Silicon Valley lefty types as well without offending them, whereas Richard is utterly hopeless in this regard. So I see a tremendous ability for both things to coexist and actually for both things to do very well. And I can see value going between them in the future pretty easily, in the same way that like I said, Singapore serves as a conduit between mainland China and the rest of the world. You might see X1 doing something similar for Pulse Chain. So I'm actually very excited about what this all means, and I'm not surprised. But a lot of people have a very dumb take on this. They look at everything as their enemy. I even look at your chat, and it's full of really stupid comments from people that just don't understand how things work. But that's just the reality of crypto. Most people
my Rolodex
right
book is down to like 4 guys that I can actually go on.
But I guess that's the way it is. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead, Sam.
What can you talk about like that vampire for Pulse, like, and how you think about that? Because it
Sure.
Like what's your thought process behind there? Because people tend to flock, and if you're watching something I watch, so it's not something necessarily everyone pays attention to, but the adoption in terms of users, like on a block explorer, right? And if you see that growing very quickly with, say, X1 versus some other thing, like, why would you? Because I would see users going into X1 faster than they go into Pulse. Like the first take, that's how I would see that. But then I know that there's like, $1.5 billion over here that can just be dumped in to manipulate the system, right? So can you talk about why you think that way, or like the rationale behind your thinking of how Pulse would be able to be the vampire to X1?
Yeah, so it's partially we're gonna have a lot of overlap in users just by the lineage, right? And the users ultimately go wherever the pump is currently. That's what I've noticed about crypto. So they will go towards Pulse Chain because they will hear when Pulse Chain is pumping or when Hex is pumping. They will hear that within that community, and they will go naturally and go over there, and vice versa. It'll be a two-way street. But the other thing is that what Richard is doing lends itself better to creating those pumps, whereas Jack is very much very clear that he's going to be a laissez-faire actor in that space, right? And naturally, any amount of volume that enters Pulse Chain externally, I think, is going to have a larger impact on pushing up the price of Hex and these other things. Naturally, you're going to see Jack go and bring mass adoption to his chain, hopefully. But the biggest whales on X1 are likely to be people like myself, right? Hexicans. And I would encourage founders on Pulse Chain. You know who you are, and I've been talking to them all week about this. They're just too afraid to piss off Richard, but they're listening to me on this point. Trust me. I encourage founders on Pulse Chain to also look at this VC round because we want to have a very loud voice in the X1 thing, right? And we want to be able to basically make sure that when Jack goes and makes a really good relationship with, let's say, Circle or Link, or one of these important providers that maybe Richard hasn't had a lot of luck with, or a Dex, that those people also then realize, hey, we should be servicing these Pulse Chain guys as well, right? So we're going to reverse vampire the vampire Jack, and I've been very open with Jack that's what I'm going to do, and he loves it. So yeah, I think that's good.
It seems to like rely on the assumption that like Pulse is going to perform better. Your argument seems to rely on that. Which if you have okay, so the way I see Pulse set up with a centralized ownership of the DEX and of the main chain that is just a copycat where none of the shit on there is going to fucking work to start with is easier to manipulate, right? So cool. I get that 100%, right? Easier to manipulate this market. Now, on the other hand, at some point, you have enough adoption coming in, it outweighs that. And your assumption, it appears behind your argument, is that you don't think the adoption on, siphoning people from 14 different layer 1 side chains, layer 2s with, Phantom AVAX, et cetera, for Zen, and siphoning all those into X1, that adoption, you believe, based on your assumption, that is not going to be greater than the manipulation from Richard. Would that be accurate?
Okay, so let's do a thought exercise, Sam. What happens if that adoption is really great and the guys that own the X1 also want Pulse Chain to do well? So when your X1 token goes up, I buy Pulse token. I can move value between both chains at will if I'm a whale, right?
That's correct.
And that's what you see happen quite often in crypto. Price is really a function of what some very big users decide to make of it, and they have a lot of fun, I imagine, basically just sending value between a bunch of tokens that they probably own and scaring the hell out of people and getting them to FOMO into one thing and then selling it and then move back to it towards the other thing. So there's no reason why that value can't then be sent into Pulse Chain to send it a lot higher. And there's other aspects of the kind of centralized Richard Hart model that lend itself very well to that as well. So I think it's a tremendous opportunity in that sense. And we talked about diversification as well. So, there will be days when X1 will be outperforming Pulse Chain for sure, and vice versa. As a person that owns a lot of both, I don't really care, right? I'm going to be thinking about, how do I move value from one to that's maybe overpriced at this point in time on a relative value basis to the other. And and what the plebs in the chat are going to be thinking is, oh, this is pumping because Jack had an interview today with somebody, that's why it's pumping. It's like, that's not why it's pumping. It's pumping because some massive whale just decided that he wanted to push the price of one up versus the other, and that whale probably owns both. So that's what I'm predicting you're likely to see here. There's going to be a yin and a yang here. And I quite like it. It allows Richard to be Richard and do his thing on Pulse Chain, while giving us the benefits of, the kind of more traditional openness that you normally see with an L1 that plays by all the rules and, is on the CEXs and has all the guys in Silicon Valley on its side, right? And that works well in the same way that Singapore is sort of an open economy, capitalistic, Western facing, but it serves as this big conduit to a much bigger closed economy, command economy in China. So, I think they can actually be massively synergistic. Singapore would just be a very humid, useless island if it weren't for China, right? That's just the truth. And I don't mean to offend anybody from Singapore, but that's just the reality. So I do think that these things can potentially have tremendous overlap, tremendous synergy, and I want them both to do very, very well. And I think actually they're better together than individually.
I completely agree with that last point there.
Real quick, I just got some super chats and I want to run through them. First of all, guys, 202 up in here. Come on now. Let's get them biceps in the chat. First of all, I know Buck said everyone in the chat is a pleb, and that's not true. Okay. But
almost everyone.
Oh, yes. And I am a pleb, guys. Remember this. And I want you to understand that when he's talking, when Sam's talking, they're talking from experience. They're not trying to trick you out of some shit. They could go on with their lives and do just fine. I promise you. I promise you, guys. But when we're talking about 5% of people in the world in crypto, me and Sam talk about it all the time. Within 5 years, we should see roughly 50% of the globe using cryptocurrency. Okay. So that's why we're all here. That is why I'm doing this channel. That is why Sam likes crypto. That is why Famous is doing stuff. So just remember, guys, I like to bring guys on that challenge me. Because Buck said something yesterday about VCs. I got all pissed off right away, went to his DMs and said, I'm confused. You know what I mean? I'm confused, man. Like, I just need, and then I was like, why don't we just stream and talk about it? So I want you guys to push yourselves, put people around you that definitely know more than you. Definitely. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. These guys have 18 years, 15 years more financial experience than I do. I'm learning all this stuff. Yeah, I'm a good sport. And my biggest thing is that I'm open-minded. I try to stay open-minded. I try to stay on both teams. And I really do appreciate this community so much. And guys, smash that like button. Are you kidding me? Let's get it going. I'm so stoked out. But let's get to these questions real quick. PNW, first of all, this is one of the biggest non-plebs in the history of non-plebs. And trust me, just trust me. This is true, and he's a great man. Conversations like this is what makes crypto so hard. I always enjoy listening to Buck. He is one of the most intelligent in the game. However, I'm still very bullish on Zen. Hex is still my main bag. And guys, this dude's got bags like you'd never fucking believe. But he says Hex is still my main bag, and I believe in Zen too. And I totally agree with one of my biggest goals is to continue to make Richard and Jack butt heads, because I know what motivates men. I know what motivates me. It's competition, it's challenge, it's people, and really appreciate that $20 super chat, PNW. And let's go to the next one. Danny, I really appreciate all your comments. I've been watching as many as I can. The PH ecosystem is going to be huge. Benefits to Hex and Pulse Chain. I appreciate you so much, Danny. Thank you so much for the $10 super chat. The AED $74.99 super chat. Can we get Buck on more often? Absolutely. I would love to support Buck in any way I can. Just like he said, guys like me, foot soldiers. I'm not beating around the bush. I'm 28 years old. I'm just having a good time, okay? I am a foot soldier, and I'm a team player. And I want to help Sam where I can. And not with everything. I'm not going to teach him how to take care of his business. But I can help him by being community support, get more people to know about him, because I know how awesome he is in so many ways, and I want more people to know that, right? And I can do that. I can do that. And same with Buck. I know Buck's sharp. I know Buck's not just trying to pull everyone's leg like they think, and like a lot of people think. So yes, I think we can have Buck more often, and I'll make sure I make it beneficial to Buck. So I know that I can make that happen. All right. Thank you so much for the super chat. Ash, Buck, can we ask you a serious question? Sorry. Why do you care about all these relationships when none of them were needed to do a 10,000x in hacks?
That's a great question, Ash. And the simple reason is that 10,000x is basically unrepeatable, and we won't even get close to it unless we get mass adoption, right? So the smaller something is, the easier it is to do a 10,000x. I think we all inherently know that. So as something grows in size, economically speaking, its power gets harder and harder to double or triple, etc. Right? So in the investment world, Sam will be familiar with this concept. It's called the law of large numbers. It's a concept that comes from math, but it basically, means that if you're, let's say, a fast-growing economy like China, you can't grow fast forever, because eventually you'll grow faster than the rest of the world. You can only grow as fast as the rest of the world in the long term, right? So that's a limiting factor on all crypto. The way Richard describes this to his user base is more simple. He just goes, market cap is heavy. Bitcoin market cap's too heavy, right? But yeah, they mean the same thing. So yeah, we got a 10,000x. I bought Hex on Buydesk for 1 Satoshi. So I'm very familiar with this. But what was the market cap of Hex at that point? Maybe $10 million, right? Maybe if you remove the OA, it was very easy to do that kind of return from that starting point. We're at a different starting point now, so that's the reason why.
Buck, I wanted to ask you about two different things, and since we're kind of talking about adoption, or that's kind of been in the theme. So the crypto.com had their annual, state of the nation for crypto back in 2022 in January, right? So it's a year old. I haven't seen that they released a new one yet, but back then they estimated that there was around 3.5% of the global population that was in crypto. And if you look like a year before that, it was 50% less than that, right? And if you look at any technology, fucking for the last 100+ years, they've always followed an S curve. What are your thoughts on adoption in crypto being very, very explosive over the next 5 years, or 5 to 7 years, to get over 50% of the globe in crypto? I know that it requires a new way of thinking for people, but shit happens very, very quickly. And I think that, the more you get adoption from the poor people, as you call them, right? Where they're going to get their friends in there. The rich people don't fucking matter. It's the massive revolutions never happen from the people that have the money, right? Because those are the people where the poor people are actually revolting against, right? So what do you think about this? Is why it's adopting very quickly in third world type countries. Nigeria is an example of that. Obviously they have certain incentives in place, but it's more of an incentive in those countries, right? I was talking to a dude yesterday in Nigeria, and I paid him through crypto because they're, PayPal's not stealing 50% of his money, or whatever the case is. But what do you think about 50% adoption over the next 5 to 7 years? Because it's going to impact things.
Yeah. So anytime I hear somebody say my strategy for winning in crypto is I'm going to onboard the third world, I want to sell that coin or short that coin immediately. So that's I know logically what you said makes a lot of sense. Okay, that you're going to get a lot of bodies at this problem, and that's what's going to make things grow explosively. But I don't actually think that's the way investments work in terms of valuation. What you want is to get the average American, the average kind of wealthy person in crypto, right? When we get all those people in crypto and very comfortable with putting, more than their lunch money into crypto, that's when you'll have that explosive growth. I don't actually think the third world matters at all for that. As a matter of fact, it's almost like a tax on crypto because you have to deal with all those people and they're not particularly profitable. And I know this is somebody who's a sacrifice, right? I get way more traction, way more help from one of the whales that gives me, 6 figures because these guys have connections. They want to help you. They're smart. They can give you good advice, right? And then I've got a million guys that we call Jeets who basically ask 100 million different stupid questions, none of which are important, and offer you nothing. And then they sell for a 2x, right? So I don't actually think that's the people that you actually want to care about. But I do agree with you that this is an S curve, and we're going to see massive adoption, particularly as young guys like Jim Rat here enter that stage of their life where they actually start to make a lot of money. If you're in your 20s, very few people make any money in their 20s. Most of you don't have the skills yet. You haven't gotten far enough up the corporate ladder. You don't own a business yet, but you will potentially in 10. And you guys are digitally native. I up, using a typewriter. I got the internet when I was, basically, about 10 years old. But, I'm not as technologically sophisticated as you guys are, who've literally only lived with a world with smartphones. And soon there will be people on crypto that can't remember a period before crypto, right? Whereas to me, it feels like yesterday when Bitcoin was invented. I remember it very well in 2009. So, when those younger people do get more money, they're naturally more likely to buy things in this kind of digital asset world. You're going to see the really wealthy people, the asset managers, the fund managers, the pension funds, actually start to take this stuff very seriously, and that's when they'll start to move their trillions of dollars into digital assets in general. So I do think that's coming in a big way, and that makes me very happy to be a long-term holder of crypto assets, broadly speaking. And but yeah, I don't think the third world is the way forward. I remember Charles Hoskinson saying he was doing this. I was like, okay, fuck, sell on my ADA. There was another guy who runs a dog coin who was saying he was going to onboard India about a week or two ago. And I sold the fuck out of that. Literally the moment I saw that. And yeah, anyway, I don't know how that one's going.
Do you think that your position in legacy, and given where there's biases there, right? So do you think that is like there's a lot of bias in there, right? Because the adoption makes a lot more sense for people that have lower sources of income, or let's just say the average or whatever, that bottom 50%. It makes more sense for people like that to adoption because the optionality of returns, but also from like third world country standpoint, like you don't have a third party stealing 50% of your money for, doing a transaction with somebody on the other side of the planet. And when we go through this next, because I think you were talking about adoption from a price performance standpoint and not necessarily from a user standpoint, the number of users versus like the price of the tokens going up. It sounded like I could have been wrong on that, but it sounded like it was more so to do with like what's going to drive a lot of the prices up there, right? And I agree that there's going to be some people that are left behind in legacy, but there's going to be a bunch of those people who are slightly forward looking and get into crypto in advance, like that are, but that's already after like the masses of like, small people get into crypto, so to speak.
Yeah. So, I mean, legacy guys are already in crypto, to be honest. They were probably in it before most of you guys were, and they were probably in it before the third world is. they're
that's
naturally
like
trained
this.
to.
That's like this when you say legacy, though. It's like single digits, right? It's like a teeny.
No. I'm talking about their PA, their personal account, so their own money. So, like one of the biggest early investors in Bitcoin, serious investors, is literally the employees at Fidelity, which is based in Boston. You guys probably know it, Sam. They're one of the world's biggest asset managers. So basically, they've been mining Bitcoin for years, just in their office as a hobby, right? And I work in traditional finance, and I can tell you, 7 years ago, I was the only guy in the office that owned crypto, probably, right? Now, pretty much my whole office owns some crypto, right? But they haven't been able to put real money and into it because they didn't really trust it until really this cycle, right? And as a firm, almost nobody can actually invest in crypto yet, right? This is very new stuff that's only come around since this last cycle. And before that, all you had was the Grayscale Trust, right? So now you're seeing a plethora of digital asset products come to the market, but almost nobody's invested in them yet. So the big pools of money that these people manage aren't in it yet, really. So that's true, and that's where the big thing is. But what the average person who manages money is doing is they're basically front running this by buying it now, because they do anticipate that it'll happen in the future. So that's how I know it's coming as well. It's like when I see the guys, the big boys buying the Bitcoin and the Ethereum, I know it's because they know that eventually they're going to be buying it with their customers' money when they can. For the moment, we don't quite have all the things in place to really enable it for especially the more esoteric parts of crypto, like hex, right? Right now, if you're an institutional investor, you can just about touch Ethereum and Bitcoin, but you couldn't go to Pulse Chain. No way in hell. Like the things just don't exist to enable you to do it. So it is definitely coming. But I will say about the EM side of things, I'm a bit of an EM expert. I don't want to go too much into my background, but I've lived overseas since I graduated from college. And I speak a bunch of languages, and I have quite a bit of experience in these places, so I know them pretty well. Probably better than I know America at this point. So what I found in those places is that they're not good places to go onboard clients. If you look at places like India or countries like it, a lot of these people don't have bank accounts, and there's a simple reason for it. It's because it's not profitable for the banks to give them bank accounts, right? So why is it going to be profitable for us to onboard them?
Because it's a user. Why is like Facebook or like Google valuable? Because everybody fucking uses it, right? And you just the ability for somebody to have a bank account by just like downloading an app, right? And now I have a bank account, and I could be in a third world country where it doesn't make sense for a centralized entity to do that for me, but I can just download a wallet, and now I have a bank account that I've never had before, right?
Yeah, so I get the argument for Metcalfe's law there, but the reality is where Facebook is going to make all of its money is charging as ad revenue, and guess where people can pay a lot of money for ads? It's not a third world country. It's America or Europe, or other wealthy countries. That's where all the money is now.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just see that the numbers are going to be so fucking massive that people don't understand what's going to take place, though, is as how I'm seeing it. Like, we're at 3.5%, right? So I understand what you're saying, but we're at 3.5%. We're going to be when they come out, another firm comes out with a research report for the duration of 2022, they're going to be like, okay, we're at 5.5% or 7% of people in crypto globally, right? And then that's going to continue to escalate faster and faster. And like, I think that yes, you have one whale who likes to move around several $100 million or several $1 billion. Cool, right? But when you take in, 2 billion more people, that every person has, $27, right? The numbers will just get staggering because they're like the whole entire population is going to be in crypto, right? Like that's my personal belief, and maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think I'm wrong. It's just going to be in crypto in one form or another in the future. And I actually wanted to transition this into stocks or like the traditional legacy markets. If you believe what I believe, that everybody's going to be in the crypto in the future, then that would imply stocks are going to go away in the current form, or at least denominated in dollars or fiat currency. What are your thoughts on like that ownership structure of like equities and stocks and stuff, and or stock market? Like, how do you see that playing out? Because I think that like I just don't see that continuing in its current form as we transition to everybody in crypto. And I'm not saying this is the next 24 months, right? This is something that's going to happen over, the next 7 to 14 years, or however long it takes to get to 90% of people in crypto.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I meant to say this when you were talking about S curves earlier. I think that's the S curve you want to think about, actually, is that. So I think a good thing to always look back on is the early internet, in the 90s when the internet really sucked. So I'm in my late 30s. So I remember the early internet. I bet you do too. Dialing in, how it took, a few seconds to load a photograph of a naked woman. But that being a pretty amazing innovation at the time. But you didn't have smartphones. You didn't have any of this. You didn't have social media. Websites were basically static, with a few exceptions. But it got a lot better. And I think that's kind of where we are in crypto. Crypto still sucks. Right. It's very hard to use. You need to be relatively smart to use it. Lots of people get scammed every day because it's so hard to use. Things aren't intuitive. I think we're there. And I think in 2001, we really saw the big tech bubble that, was just the mother of all bubbles, where everybody finally figured it out that the internet was not just a thing for looking at porn, but like was actually going to become this major e-commerce thing. And it ended badly for most companies, which is probably the one thing to keep in mind. Most companies that were in that bubble blew up and died. But you did have major things come out of that, like Amazon. And you had Google come not too long after that. And you had Google's predecessors come in that cycle. I think that's where we are in crypto. Now, tying this to crypto, one thing that didn't really get disrupted by e-commerce, which disrupted basically all of commerce, was traditional finance. And there's good reasons for that. We have a big moat around us where, the government's basically protects us in traditional finance. But what I do see happening is, and that's likely to persist. So I don't think the New York Stock Exchange is going to go away. All right. But what I do see happening.
And what time frame?
Like even 15, 20 years. I don't think it happens then. Right. I do see happening, Sam, is I see a parallel economy emerging on the internet. And I do believe that will be the world's largest economy in 20 years' time. Right. And if you look at what's really cool about crypto, besides massive gains, as Richard likes to say, it's that we're replacing so much of what guys like me do in the traditional finance world with the blockchain. So Uniswap basically does what the NASDAQ does, and it does it without any employees. You can IPO, your token there. You can trade your token. Uniswap does basically $2 billion of volume a day. Which is comparable to the U.S. high yield market in terms of daily volume. It's very impressive for something so new, right? That's a huge innovation. Aave, which is what we're forking, is basically just a bank on the blockchain. So it does what Wells Fargo does, allows you to deposit your money and get a yield for that. It allows borrowers to borrow your money and go, start businesses or do whatever they need to do with that. So it's an amazing innovation. So I do see every aspect of traditional finance sort of being reproduced on the blockchain and and it'll start to create its own kind of economy, and especially as young guys like Jim here, start to get money. They're not going to want to use the legacy systems. They're not going to use mutual funds,
I've
unless the
never
government
used
forces them
anything
to.
but crypto in my life.
Yeah, there you go. So, you're going to be digitally native. You're going to be comfortable with it. And in 10, 15 years, you're going to have money. And I say that as somebody who was, broken in his early 20s once as well, right? Like I know exactly what that feels like. But, it gets better financially speaking. So 10, 15 years from now, you're going to enter that prime period in your career where you start to make a ton of money, right? Which usually happens in your mid to late 30s. And it goes through your kind of late 40s, right? That's when you don't usually make more money after the age of 40, most people, right? But that's going to happen in 20 years time. So I think that's going to be a pretty exciting thing to see, and that's what I'm in crypto for the long term. I'm looking forward to it. And
So if I understand, I'm just trying to understand what you're saying. So you think that stock is going to be like horses, right? Where when automobiles came along, the horses went away virtually for most of the population, but there's like my mom has a couple of horses and shit like that, right? There's still people who have horses. The Amish have horses here in the United States, and certain parts of the world they use horses for various things. So you think the stock market's going to be like that? Because yes, I think that a digital economy that is the internet is going to be incredibly massive, like dwarfing like what's currently in place. And so, like, is that how you're seeing stock?
I don't know if it's necessarily. I don't know if it's necessarily that bad, because the automobile just made horses redundant to the point where horses were only useful as recreational things, pretty much for most.
Don't you see that for stocks and equity though?
Not necessarily, because not necessarily, because I think there is a benefit to having kind of this traditional legal structure for many things, right? So I imagine they'll coexist, and I also believe that the government will force these things to coexist, right? Most likely. So I don't think JP Morgan is just going to say, hey, we're going to give up on this thing, and like I do think there's room for both things. But what I do think is that the bargaining power of the internet economy is what I'm calling it, will get bigger, and but I don't think they go away in my lifetime. But I do think we will see a much bigger internet economy and everything connected to it, for sure.
Do you and I don't know if you've checked this out, but I find that this, just something that I've been researching the last couple of days, could be the framework that is used for companies in the future. It's called BitTensor. And I'm not saying that anybody should put any money in there. They should do their own research and shit, but it's AI with a layer of, then there's blockchain. And how it's worked is, as you mine, say, Bitcoin, once that cryptographic problem is solved, right, all that energy kind of goes to waste, right? Well, what if you used that energy from a proof of work system to solve problems in AI, where you don't have silos around the globe of research teams that are not sharing the information? They may or may not share a paper on the results of what they learned about how to create a new algorithm. And then for me to try to reproduce that is very challenging. So what I see is like potentially happening is, I'm like, okay, cool. This BitTensor thing is very cool. Designing it so that the power of the network is utilized to incentivize people to add knowledge, so to speak, to the network in terms of increasing AI. And as a validator, you can kind of like encourage the direction of AI to solve a problem. And so I'm like, wow, this is very unique, because like Pulse, which is a copycat of fucking Ethereum, right? So there's not going to be, you're not going to beat Ethereum at its own game, right? But this is a different model where this type of framework could be utilized to create entities in the future where you don't have that geographic tying to them. And this type of thing could be the future of, say, the stock market, but it's a completely different form, right? If I'm mining this, bit tensor thing, what I'm doing is helping secure the network, and I'm getting paid to do that. So being paid to be a part of a company where you put in multiple layers together, not in the form of like a DAO, right? Because there's issues there, or maybe a hybrid between a DAO and something else, to create like true global companies that are not structured in the same way where capital gets all the yield, right? The capital contributors, the people who have money, are currently extracting all the value, so to speak, from a monetary standpoint, right? Which has always been the case. And I think that with crypto and the technology behind it, this is going to change and evolve so that this also puts another giant pin in like the balloon of the stock market. Because with enough creativity and resourcefulness in this direction, you could think about creating a decentralized, company to do anything you wanted to do, where you use mining as the power behind it to do certain things. And I think that could be what we like. This thing just launched last year, 8 months ago or something, right? And it's very interesting to take a look at, because I'm like, this framework people can modify and use for all sorts of different stuff. And then, like, if you look at crypto landscape, it's just like, oh yeah, this copycat of fucking Ethereum. Yep, cool. Another copycat of Ethereum. Oh, cool. Another copycat of Ethereum, right? But you're not going to beat Ethereum in this game. It's already got way too much of a network effect, right? Like you were mentioning, people in legacy. You can get into Bitcoin and Ethereum more than likely through your firm or whatever the case is from a legacy standpoint. You can't get into Pulse. You can't get into those things. So you're not going to fucking get, like, Ethereum has this gigantic network effect. In order to like beat Ethereum, so to speak, or you have to have a completely different model, not just be like, okay, cool, I'm going to copy GRC living his life. You know what I mean? Because I can't do that. It's his life. He knows what's valuable to him, right? And I don't see that. I know you haven't like looked into that, but it's a very unique model that I see people potentially applying to other places, and like obfuscating or making the stock market even less relevant into the future.
Sure. So it's interesting you mentioned that. Richard, before Hex, wanted to make something like that. I think he called it fluid dynamics, or he had some fancy word where they were going to solve math problems for the proof of work consensus. So yeah, and then he just decided, oh, it's too hard, I'll just make Hex instead. That's basically what happened. But what you're talking about is really interesting, and I do suspect that crypto will get a lot better and a lot more useful. The problem is it's very hard to know what to invest in, and that's always the case with technology. You talked about horses becoming obsolete because of automobiles, but the thing is, if you invested broadly in automobiles, you probably would have invested in the early 20th century. You probably would have invested in about 1,000 companies, and probably only one or two of them would have succeeded. Is the reality, because everybody in the early 20th century was creating an automobile company, because everybody could see it was a big deal, right? And you're seeing something similar with crypto right now. So that's the cautionary side of this. It's like, this sounds like an awesome idea. I have no idea if it'll be successful, and that goes for everything else. Like, if I look at my own experience with a similar type of thing with the early internet, in 1995, I think I was using CompuServe and Netscape. These two words probably mean nothing to Jim Rat, right? You probably don't know what either of those things are. If I say, hey, start me up, what does that mean to you, Jim Rat? Nothing, right? Well, that was Windows 95. It was a big fucking deal in 1995, right? If someone sang that line from the Rolling Stones song for the next 10 years, everybody knew you were talking about Windows 95. But now these things mean absolutely nothing. And shortly thereafter, we were using this thing called AOL Instant Messenger. You might have heard of that, right? But I only bring this up because so many of these things do end up getting quote unquote MySpaced, and I expect that'll happen with crypto. And I think that can happen too. Yeah, somebody writes, "You've got mail." Yeah, exactly. All these things that seemed like they had an insurmountable, unbeatable position, like AOL did in the 90s. They're basically gone now, and they don't even exist anymore. So I would say that Ethereum and Bitcoin and Hex and everything else run that same risk over a 20-year time horizon. And that's what makes tech investment so damn difficult. And that's why guys like Warren Buffett don't do it, because it's really just that hard to pick the winners. Yeah, good luck with that one.
Even Ethereum, none of us know if Ethereum is going to be the leader in 10 years. Me and Sam talk about it all the time.
Even Ethereum could be way better. I mean, like I have millions of dollars of Ethereum, okay, and Ethereum sucks. Okay, like it's slow, it's hard to use, it's unintuitive. You got to use this thing called MetaMask that's not even connected to Ethereum directly. What's a nonce? What is Gwei? Like, what the fuck? It's really hard to use.
And it's centralized.
And it's centralized. It can cost you hundreds of dollars to do a swap when the market's busy. That sucks. Like my E-Trade trades don't cost that much money, right? It fucking sucks. Right?
I gotta wait till Sunday fucking afternoon at 7:13 p.m. to do a swap so I don't get wrecked on lunch money for the rest of the week.
Yep. So, Vitalik and his homeboys are doing everything they can to try to keep up, because they know if they don't, then someone else will come out with that thing, and you could see it completely made obsolete very quickly, right? So it feels like it has
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Most of the people I ask the biggest problem with Ethereum, they say that it could go to zero. Like smarter guys, they're like, we don't know if this is going to work out long term. That's basically it.
That's right. And what they mean is, long term. So, wealthy people and professional investors tend to think in years when they invest, because you kind of have to. Like, it's part of the rules, right? You don't when you work for like a fund manager, you don't buy a stock and sell it 3 days later, after a pump. Like that doesn't happen, right? It's expensive to do that, especially when you're managing a lot of money, and it just doesn't work very well, right? As an investment technique. So when most fund managers buy things, they buy it for kind of 5 years, 7 years as a time horizon. And when you're looking at things on that time frame, and this is how I always get in trouble with the Hex community. I go, you guys want to stay for 15 years? Okay, that's great. Good luck with that, guys. Because 15 years is a long fucking time in any investment. Let alone a highly speculative, risky new thing like a crypto investment, especially for something that's immutable. And, I don't mean to say that we can't react to that, but it's just like, why would you do that? Why would you lock yourself? I mean, especially the guys that's all they do. I only 555, right? Like, guys, that's probably not advisable. You've just basically made yourself completely liquid for 15 years in something that most likely goes to zero over that period.
Unless you got super lucky and got 10x Hedron bonuses. That's because you were there at that exact moment.
Well, Hedron was a nice creative response to that dilemma. Actually, it was guys that did that basically going, oh fuck, how do I monetize this? I'm going to create a token. And by the way, I have over $1 million worth of Hedron, so like I'm not bagging Hedron at all.
I tell my parents Alex from Hedron is Richard Hart.
I'm pretty sure he's not, because I talked to that's a meme.
I just tell them because they're like, oh, look at this nice guy. He looks nice and nerdy, and I would invest in his stuff.
Yeah, he does. He's got a beard like he's in ZZ Top. But yeah, so crypto investments are very hard, and over 15 years, my forecast for just about every crypto is zero, right? So whatever coin you're showing me today, 15 years from now, I'll bet you that it's worth zero. But having said that, I feel very bullish long term about crypto in general. So I'm just going to stay in the game, and I'm going to stay well diversified, almost passively. And I think I'm going to do very well over that time frame. Just keeping my head on a swivel and looking at things as they come in, and every time there's a good end of cycle like we're having now, where you get to see what was good that came out in the last cycle, I'm picking it up. So some things that I'm buying, things that I wish I had more of, like AVAX and stuff like that. That I think will probably do okay over the next 5 years, right? And I'm also buying things that were very expensive at one point that now are very cheap, like Stargate, right? So about a year and a half ago, you guys all love Stargate, and Moritz, who's my frenemy, who got wrecked and welched on our 40K bet, bought Stargate right at the top. So anyway, I'm buying it now because I think this is pretty interesting, and might do very well when the next bull market comes. So there's little things out there like that, and I'll pick up some Solana. I don't even know anything about Solana, but it's been murdered. So I bought a bunch over the last month, right? I'll buy Aptos. I'll buy all of these things, and yeah, hopefully some of them will do okay. Probably they'll all do about the same, but there'll be a few big winners and a few losers on a relative value basis. But over 15 years, they're probably all going to zero. So, and we saw this with tech,
over
very
and
few
over
things
again.
from
Sam, I
over
know
and
you're
over
going to
again.
jump off in 1 minute. So,
Well, Buck, this has been
stay
awesome.
with me though for a sec.
Buck, this has been awesome. I enjoy the conversation. I do have to run, but appreciate you getting up in the middle of the night and having the conversation with us. GRCA, I'm sure, is going to continue going for a second, but I got to get on that other call. Appreciate you guys, and I'll talk to you soon. Later, Buck.
Later, Sam. All right, so let's switch the conversation to you for a second. I don't want to talk too much because I haven't talked and it's been amazing. So can you just do your shill? Can you talk about Famous, Fiat, and what's going on in your ecosystem right now so everyone in here can understand and know what your goals are and what you're looking at right now?
Yep. So obviously we've got Fiat and Famous, which are respectively Aave and GMX forks. We've done very well with the sacrifices for both of those. We're very happy. We will be launching Fiat on Ethereum, I believe, towards the end of February, if not in March. And that's going to be a big deal because it's going to be our first live token, where we'll be ready whenever Pulse Chain comes to launch that on Pulse Chain. Famous will take a little bit more time, but we'll be ready for Pulse Chain, I suspect. So that's just the kind of general update on those two things. Probably what's new, there's a third token that I'm going to be issuing as well, and that's going to go to a basket of sacrifice sets, including the Fiat and Fame sacrifice set. And if I can get the data reasonably well, I'll probably go to the Pulse X and Pulse sacrifice set as well. So that's going to be just a free token. And it's also going to be a token that is given as an incentive to people who interact with our Fiat and Fame protocols. So it's gonna almost start the engine, if you will, in terms of giving people an extra incentive to deposit, an extra incentive to borrow, and I think that'll probably actually happen pretty quickly as well, because the nature of this protocol, it's not as hard as the other ones that we're doing. So you could see that probably in 1 or 2 months. I'm gonna announce the details of that towards the end of February. For the moment, I've got February 24th is the day to do that. So yeah, lots of things going on. We have a wallet aggregator, which I think you guys should be using more, called Fatty.io, PHATTY.io. It basically takes all your wallets, adds them all up. That's a very useful thing. It supports not just my stuff, but it supports Richard's stuff. It supports Jack's stuff. It supports Alex's stuff. It's like Switzerland. It's going to give you that position, that idea of what your total net worth is and where all your risk is. So you guys should be using that. It's still in an alpha stage. It could be much better, but we're going to make it much better over time. So yeah, we've been very, very busy, and we're really enjoying this, and we're really appreciative for all the support that you guys have given us. So we want to thank you for that. So that third protocol is in a way is a bit of a thank you to the community, and I'm looking forward to telling you about that as well.
And for all the people that think you're just a money hungry piece of S that just wants $1 more million or $5 more million for a sacrifice, right? Like, it's so easy to think that, Buck. You know that. And I really don't think you are that. And I know you like money and stuff, but I just don't think it's like Richard saying, oh, well, Hex's USDC pool has $5 million in it. Well, Richard carries that on his wrists and neck at all times. So it's to me, it's a play on a little more than just money. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what do you say to the people? Why do you need a sacrifice for projects like this? Just for me and for everyone else, just to clear it up. What is the benefit and what are the reasons that people do sacrifices, and how does it help get this thing off the floor?
Yeah, okay, that's a good question. So let me say a few things first about sacrifices. I think in general, for you guys as investors, they're a bad idea. I think you guys should have a very high bar for what you sacrifice for. I really mean that. I've seen you guys sacrifice for some really, really disgustingly terrible things. And these are very bad investments that I see again and again and again and again and again. So you guys should really put us through the paces and make sure that what you're investing in actually makes sense, and that the people that you're talking to actually have a chance of implementing it. You should ask those hard questions. So that's a very important thing to say up front. In terms of the model, it's a flawed model. I don't know if it's a good model for you guys as investors. I think there will be some things that do very well. I would like to think that my things will be one of those things, but they may not be. But it is a very useful model in the sense that it attracts people to develop things who probably otherwise wouldn't. I can tell you in my example, which I can speak to, the guys that I have partnered with on this are not people that are, Richard Hart disciples, right? They're very shy computer scientists that find Richard's style, disgusting, frankly, right? And would never be interested in this ecosystem were it not for that model. So, so it is very handy in that it does have the ability to almost to attract people to come work very hard on this ecosystem who otherwise probably would, want to go work for Jack or go to Polygon and get a grant or something like that. So so that's one way that it's I think incredibly positive. So like we are going to see a liquidity fork, an AVAX fork, an Aave fork, a GMX fork. We're going to have NFT platforms and all that stuff very early in Pulse Chain, which I think is really a really positive side of it that people don't that people don't necessarily talk about enough when they think about the sacrifices. But having said that, the majority of the sacrifices I've seen are terrible, and I look at them and I face palm and think, why on earth would anybody give money to this?
I think I might have made a Mintra mistake. I mean, I got a mortgage and everything, of course. So, thinking in hindsight about some of these things, and I'm not hating on Mintra, but I have, first of all, never bought an NFT in my life. So that would be like, and then two.
You are lying. You have Polygon.
True. I did buy Polygon and I still have 3 and I'm holding this for the men. But you know what I mean? Like I was so excited. I was so new that I was willing to put $500 into everything. And again, then I decided to quit my job, which was smart. But you know what I mean? So I think what you said about like scaling to the right people, right? Like you're not so concerned if I sacked $500 for fiat, which I did. But you're more concerned with the guys that, really do have push and money moving into these things. And you would rather people that don't have as much money maybe just focus a little bit more on what's going on in their present environment.
I don't think it matters how much money you have. I mean, when you play poker, whether it's $100,000 pot or a $20 pot, you need to play the hand the same way. So yeah, I would just say try to hold us to higher standards in general. Somebody asked, do we have a test net? Which is a good question. We do on both of our products. If you just type testnet.fiat or testnet.famous.io. But that was one standard that I brought, I think, to the community, because I think a lot of these guys just put a good looking guy in a white paper on a YouTube channel and raised a lot of money for something that maybe they can't implement, or maybe they don't even have any intention of implementing it. And that's problematic. So when I went to do fiat, I explained to the guys what it was and what I should do, and or what we wanted to do. And they said, well, that's great, but how do we know you can actually do this? And you're not doxed either. That's going to be a problem for a lot of people. So I was like, okay, well, what if I just actually deploy it on Pulse Chain and show you how it works, and so you can actually use it? And they're like, yeah, that would really help. And so I did that, and everybody was really surprised. They're like, holy shit, who are these guys that actually created a fully functional test net before their sacrifice? And so we did that both times, and I think people really appreciated that. And I do think that should give you guys at least some comfort that we probably can get there in the end.
It does help. It does
yeah.
help.
Yeah.
It just helps to know people are working, because in this industry, you really don't know if people are working or frankly doing nothing.
Sure.
It's just like, oh, we're trust this guy, trust that guy,
I haven't sacrificed for anything. I gave Richard a little bit for Pulse Chain, and I gave him literally lunch money for PulseX. And a big part of why I did that was because I knew that he was at the time he was saying an L1 is just, it's easier than making hex. And I was like, there's no way that could be true. There's just no way that could be true. Especially, and the other thing was he wanted to make all these changes as well. And I was like, oh, fuck, changes are hard, man, and they have unintended consequences, right? That you can't predict either. So with both of our products, I basically said, no, we're just going to fork it, and we'll change the logo and the colors and a little bit, but we'll leave them more or less the way they are, because we know they work very well, and that's all you really need, guys. Because the second you start to add new bells and whistles to things that already work very well, you might break them, or add new complexity. And I'm not surprised that we ended up where we are now, a year and a half, 2 years later, where we went back to the drawing board, and we're actually just going to directly copy Ethereum instead of trying to, gigabrain it. I'll FUD Jack a little bit on this regard. Everything he says sounds a little bit too fucking easy. And I've told him this to his face. So, anything I've said today about Zen is something that I've already directly told Jack in a private voice chat. So I don't want you guys to think I'm talking shit about him. I like the guy. I think he's interesting, but he does have a very loose interpretation of things. And there's one more important thing I want to point out to you guys, the Zen people in this chat. He hasn't taken any of your money yet, which means he doesn't have to do anything for you. I want you guys to remember that. It's very important. He's taken 0 of your dollars. So he can change the rules as much as he wants, as often as he wants. And I think you've seen him do that pretty liberally so far, right? Yeah.
I'm a quick study, and I like to read, and God damn it, I went to vacation for a week in Nicaragua, and my God, I don't know what's going on anymore.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So, and that's kind of normal with the Silicon Valley fake it till you make it structure, but it's just that to me makes Zen uninvestable, and all his other stuff uninvestable. But what I see is that he is bringing on all these people, and that with X1, there's going to be a VC class, and there's going to be an agreement, and he's not going to be able to just make shit up at that point. Right. So that's going to be very important. Once he takes money from people, he has to act a certain way. And I just want you guys to keep that.
You're telling the gym rat to stay locked in.
I'm just saying, don't be in such a rush necessarily, right? Wait until you get I think a lot of the stuff that you see from him now is sort of just a hustle to get a lot of the users, and I applaud that effort, but yeah, he hasn't taken any of your money yet, which means he can just change the rules on you guys whenever he wants. And he just like he doesn't really care that Zen goes down, right? Because he didn't make you pay for it.
He cares. I think he cares a lot
about Zen going down.
I think if he could go back and set that initial liquidity pool, he would.
I don't think so. I think he from day one was basically saying, "Yep, this thing's going to go down 18 zeros." Right. And
yeah, but why not start it at 15 zeros and just let it go up?
Because that's not the point of it. The thing that's going to go up is this X1 token. The point of this thing is to get you guys to go create an army of people to basically go mint this stuff and try to sell it to other people for a profit. You don't really care so long as someone else buys your bag from you, right? And that's why you guys have been promoting it, I think.
Well, I was I'm going to be
you in particular, but
about why I promoted it is because I saw opportunity in growing this channel.
Yeah, there you go, exactly. But it's like it's something that will create a bunch of users, but it's not a good investment for people that have a lot of money. I don't think.
Oh, you can't. Right? You say this 10 times now. You literally physically cannot invest. It would be more effort to click and slippage, and you have too much money, and you were already talking about sloshing and getting your assets. You said, I have too much hex to sell. Yeah. And I know exactly what you're saying because I have a lot of friends that are in a similar situation. They're supporters of Hex. They're supporters of Richard Hart. $5.3 million in the Hex USDC pool. You can't dump $2 million on that. You just can't because you're going to take 30% slippage. Right. So it doesn't make any sense. Now you can slosh it into other assets that have more liquidity. But again, then we get down, like you said, they're all kind of connected in a way, right? Because Richard almost taught us how to use all-chain bridge, how to slosh into Bitcoin, how to slosh into Ethereum, and how to get funds out of these things. And then you realize Hart's law, it's all connected kind of because of the pairs. And it's complicated.
Yeah. So like I said, I think Zen NFT, Zen Next, these things are all sideshows. The main event is the X1 L1. That's where he's going. He told us yesterday he went to have lunch with a VC guy on the other side of the island. That's where he's actually putting his effort. That's where the real thing's coming. So just keep that in mind while you guys are all obsessed with all the stuff that he's doing with Zen. That's all a sideshow, and he can change the rules on that at any point in time. But once he's taken VC money for this X1 thing, he's going to have to treat that with the respect that an investment deserves. And
you said this to me directly yesterday or directly in a chat we were in, and I immediately went, fuck you, Buck, because I knew you were right. And I wanted to say, fuck you. And then I went to your DM, asked probably some more questions, but the whole thing was, you said it's uninvestable because there's a future roadmap and I don't know what the fuck it is. And I don't know what it's going to take, but now think about it. So let's say I spent a few $100s on mints. I have a couple 100 million Zen. And guess what? Now there's VCs that are going to buy 10 Zunicorns, burn them and get an amazing rate on the X1 chain. And I can't do that. I don't have
or they're just going to invest directly and they're going to negotiate a better rate. Right. That's the reality. You guys will probably be able to do something with all this crap that he's created and it'll get you some X1. I just don't know, like for me, like if it makes sense to even bother with it, the risk of him, diluting it, is too high or changing the rules. So that's what I'm warning you guys. It's just, watch out for that. Cause I have a hard time imagining the VCs are going to get a worse deal than you guys. Right. So, I intend to align myself with the VC class if I can. Rather than the pleb bulk minting.
Dude, working out of pleb bill is tough, man. It's tough. And when we say pleb,
I get
bill,
it.
average finances, it's like you really have to put effort in somewhere. Yeah, and that's why I'm doing the channel. That's why I'm trying to scale and help everyone else and try to see if I can be a team player, because it's like without effort in real business and real value, like you're not going to do anything.
Mm. And one of your comments is the VCs can't sell fast, though. Yeah, the VCs don't need to sell fast, and no rich people need to, right? They want good investments that they can hold for years. It's a pain in the ass to go find a new fucking investment every other day, right? Like, but crypto people seem to think that this, like, being able to turn around and sell it the next day is a good thing. Like that's the worst thing.
Well, that means you're emotionally tied to being broke.
It means you're basically just rolling the dice. It's like playing Russian roulette. It's a zero sum game. Like one of you guys is going to get the bullet, right? You want to invest in things that are going to actually grow over a 4 or 5 year period of time, and that's what these guys do, and they make a lot of money doing it. So and it's where all the wealthiest people in the world invest. So I applaud Jack's strategy. Actually, like I really think what he's doing is very clever in this regard. On the one hand, he's convincing you guys of all these important values and building a massive community, but on the other hand, he's pragmatic and knows he needs to play ball with the man, if you will. And also bring in the big money, because it's the big money that's going to actually send this thing further, right? Every time you need help, it's really useful if your investors are already super connected, wealthy people that can make phone calls on your behalf, right? I see this in my little plebby ass protocols, honestly. You know what I mean? Like I get help all the time from what we might call a whale in our world, right? These guys suddenly introduce me to somebody, or give me advice about something that I don't know about. Like it's just very, very helpful, and these people are worth the money that they're worth cozying up to. So many people want to believe that everything, that we're all equal and all this stuff, and I guess we are, before God, but not in terms of our ability to help a crypto product go further, right? We're not all equal in that regard. Some people are much more useful as investors.
And some people are useful. Like for me, for example, I love talking to people, right? I really get inspiration and energy from speaking to others, and some people don't. And so I'm like, well, how can I be the most useful in this situation? Yeah, sometimes I get a little wrapped up in the technicals, but in reality, I'm here to help Sam. I'm here to help you. I'm here to help Richard, because that's where my value comes from. I know it because ever since Sam's come on the show, a lot of people have used his supplement company, for example, and he likes that. He really likes that. And I think his supplement company is great. And I think that you're extremely smart and you have a lot of experience, and I want to help you because I think that will make you like me and support me. And I could be friendly along the way, of course, and just try to be as honest as I can. But my role, guys, in this is I took my best skill, which is talking and communicating and networking and just having fun with it. And I say, how can I help as many people as I can? It started with Richard, right? Because that's all I knew. And I was like, I want to see if I can add value to Richard. I actually have my first notebook before I ever started streaming or anything. I said, how can I provide some value to Richard Hart? A little, a tiny bit, right? And then, he started retweeting my stuff, all of this stuff, and then he blocked me, of course, unblocked me on Heck's 3rd birthday, iconic moment. But anyway, dude, thank you, Stu. This has been my favorite stream in a while, man, and I really appreciate your insight, and I'm kind of calming down. For everyone that, if you've noticed any different in my attitude, I quit the weed, guys. I quit it.
Right.
I quit the weed. That's why I've shut up so much and let the big boys talk, because I quit the goddamn weed. And I'm going to make a video about 14 days without weed and how that made me feel, just because those videos do really good on the internet. A lot of people try to quit marijuana, and I don't really mind the quitting. I just like to document the experience more. But I'm trying to get more fit, because I was starting to get out of hand, and my ego was starting to think that I was smart again. And it's just not the case. Like, I'm just a normal guy that's learning, and I just want to continue on that path and just do the best that I can. So for all you guys that are in here, I really appreciate you. Buck, thank you so much. And I would love to continue to support the product and continue to support Pulse Chain moving forward and providing as much value as I can to you, because you don't understand how much I actually learn from these chats. Like it gives me like a month of learning just by listening because of the experience you guys have. And I really do.
I appreciate you guys, and I'd like to come back at the end of February or early March, whenever it happens, when we're launching our product. Crypto Scribbles just called me a complete social path, which I've never been called a social path before. That's an interesting word. Yeah, I'm looking forward to showing these guys what we've got and the price appreciation that the sacrifice people are going to get.
And are we allowed to talk about your little personal life for half a second that you mentioned before?
Yeah, I'm gonna have a baby boy in the next 2 weeks. So yeah, there's gonna be a mini Buck out there.
Let's go!
That's
good
news.
Awesome, dude. Congratulations, man. I'm so excited for you because I know that's a big moment in every man's life, and I've of course not experienced that, but I know Bullish talked to me, and Sam's going through. He's been in a long-term relationship as well, so we talk about these things, and I'm so happy for you, and I hope it opens up another avenue in your brain, in your heart, because I know that kids can do that sometimes.
Yeah, my heart is black, like my women, yeah. Thank you so much, guys.
Yeah, and thank you so much, Buck, and I'm going to end this with a classic, guys. I'm going to end this with the classic. I can't help it. I'm a softie for RH. I'm a team player, man. And this is what got me out off of the tower. Literally. I think it was this video. I was working. I had a little business, and he was telling
this one.
me, yep. And he was telling me, hey, kid, you can work 24 hours all day long, and I'm still going to smoke you every day without doing anything. And I was like, damn, he's right. And again, it might seem very naive, but, I did drugs and did whatever I want for the first 22 years of my life. I didn't study inflation. I didn't study the dynamics of politics and the banking system. And this dude decided to come on here with a smile on his face. These were some of his best moments. I'm sorry. And he doesn't have to do this again, guys. Like, just because a dude puts out really good content doesn't mean he has to do that shit all the time. So why don't you just go back and listen to it? And I'm going to play this one for you. In RH, I got a young man that tweets you every single day until you come on the show. He's on day 45 right now. So every day he goes on Twitter and he says, day 45, tweeting RH until he comes on Crypto in the Morning. And I'm hoping he doesn't have to do that for 300 days straight, Rich. Maybe not 300, maybe like 150, maybe like 155. And I DM Richard probably more than I DM anyone, and he never answers me anymore. But I hope he sees my messages, and I hope he does know that I really do appreciate him for getting me out of a fucking mess of working 24 hours a day and literally just breaking even. So, Buck, thank you so much. I'm going to play this, guys. Crypto in the Mornings live every single day at 11 a.m. Eastern. And I hope you guys smash that like button. And without you guys, I don't know, I would be doing something else. But you guys are really supporting the channel. The channel's growing a lot. People send super chats, people send donations, and people send kind words. It really means the world to me. I don't care if it's a big deal or a little deal. To me, it means a lot. And I do very much appreciate it. And we're going to be giving you more updates on the Pulse Chain ecosystem. And when Pulse Chain does launch, I want you guys to know, and I think Buck will probably maybe make a 20, 30 an hour appearance. I will be doing a Pulse Chain launch 24-hour live stream. So when that day comes, I will be doing my first 24-hour live stream. I might not be sitting there for the whole entire time, but I'll have active guests. And I'll be working through. I know there's going to be scams on lock, right? So I want to be helping people not get scammed for the most part, guys. Have an amazing day. If you're still in here and you have not seen this video, I suggest you listen to it, guys. Have an amazing day.
So you want to get rich. I'm going to tell you a little something about money. In this world, you don't see the richest people doing things with their time and getting paid hourly. There's not enough hours in the day. If you're the highest paid lawyer, the highest paid doctor, no matter how much you make, there's still just not enough hours in the day. There's only one of you, right? We may have different educations, different skills, different opportunities, but the one thing we all have the same is our time. So in this world, if you want to become truly wealthy financially, you need to do things which aren't based on your hours. That means that you need to start a business or own something, because when you're sleeping, the things that you own will still be working, right? So let's say you own a piece of real estate and you rent it out. When you go to sleep, your real estate's still working for you. Let's say you start a business and you have some employees doing the work. Once you can afford your first employee, you can waste your time however you like, assuming that the employee you hired is the right one and can do the job as well as you used to, right? So something that I advise people to do is your first goal should be to buy your own freedom. You should be working so that you don't have to actually show up to work anymore. You can go learn the next thing to take it to the next level, because most businesses aren't going to make you a billionaire. Most businesses won't make you a millionaire. In this world, for you to be a billionaire or a millionaire, you've got to fight the effects of competition. You've got to fight the effects of taxation. There's a whole ton of things in this world trying to make it so that you can't get that rich. So, what are some things that you can use to your advantage? Well, I love to use things that can scale. And scale is just a fancy word for, if it works one time, you could do it 10 times as well, right? So let's say you're in a service industry and you've got to go door to door and fix air conditioners. That's really hard to do, because if you need to fix twice the number of air conditioners, you need twice the trucks, twice the tools, and twice the insurance, and twice the advertising, perhaps. And it takes twice as much time. And the trucks break down, the people don't show up on time, and half the employees have drug problems for whatever reason. Maybe it's a Florida thing. And it just doesn't scale well. Now, there's other businesses that scale totally well. Let's say you have a software business or software as a service. You get one client, great. You get two clients, great. How many clients can you put in a single server? Hundreds, thousands. You don't have to do anything different. It's just zero. The fancy word for it is zero marginal cost to provide the service to the next person, right? So there's some businesses like moving boxes, where if I sell boxes of things on the internet and make 40% markup, or let's say it's a competitive industry and I make 15 or 20% markup, well, could I sell 10 times as many boxes? Yeah, surely I could, right? Could I sell them into other countries? Could I relabel them? Could I give them certain different features? Could I differentiate my product in a different way? Yeah, sure, I could. But what if I just have a local retail storefront? Once you've like capped out on the number of people you can reach locally, you can't bring people from out of state. They just don't want to make the drive, right? You can't stock as many things on your shelves as for display. You run out of display room, right? Some people, you want to, sell their stuff, and they see you're selling a certain competitive product, they won't let you carry their line because they don't want to, compete in that area, or they've already got so many other retailers in the area that they don't need you. So I love the idea of things which scale and multiply, but you might not be able to start there. You might have to buy your freedom first. So what I tell people is, if you're smart enough to know what to buy for yourself, then you're smart enough to help other people buy the same stuff, right? So I happen to like this top hat. Some top hats, when you look on the side, they just go straight. I don't like a top hat that goes straight. I like this curve deal. Some top hats just come up straight on the top. I think it looks boring. I like a top hat that flares at the top a little bit. So I probably know more about top hats than the average gentleman. And now that I know what the hell I'm talking about, I know which one holds their shape. I know what type of shape is good. I know which ones aren't going to sweat on your head too much. I'm now qualified to sell them better than most other people, because I had to learn these things to get a good product for myself anyway. So now that I've learned these things for myself, it's a somewhat tragedy to just let that information die inside me. Why don't I set up a store, set up a little website, costs almost nothing, and say, look, I know what the best top hats you can buy on the internet are. Here they are. I'll drop ship them to you, or I'll ship them to you myself, or you can come see them in my store and take whatever you pay for them. Most things are made in China. You buy them, you stock them. People call, they want it. You bring them to your house, you sell it to them. You don't have to open up a storefront. You can sell it out of your house. You don't have to make tons of money. I prefer products that are $200, $300 so that you can make, $100, $120 when someone comes to your house, right? If you do really low ticket items, you got to sell to so many more people. You got to sell to 3 or 4 times the people, or maybe 2 times the people if you raise your margins up. So my point is, do something small that you can make a little money on. Anything that you're intelligent about, you can make money on. We live in a world now, like some German guy wanted to kill and eat some other German guy. So he put out an advertisement and said, hey, I'm looking for someone that will let me kill and eat them. And someone responded, and he let him kill him, and they ate him together before he died. So that teaches you that whatever crazy, silly thing that you can think of, you can find a counterparty on the internet. Whatever silly thing that you want to sell, if you get that ad on the internet, you can get someone to call, and this likely you'll be able to do some commerce. Okay. So if you're smart enough to buy anything for yourself and have any product knowledge at all, then you're smart enough to get a good deal on Alibaba, AliExpress, Banggood. You know, there's a lot of .coms out there that'll give you the best deal in the world on a thing. And just put out an ad locally. If the phone rings, great, you get to make a little money. If the phone doesn't ring, great, you have that product that you bought at a low price, you get to use it yourself, right? So in this world, if you're working by the hour, there's no future in it. There's no long-term future in working by the hour. You take a guy like Michael Jordan, multi-millionaire, the vast majority of his revenue does not come from his earnings as a football player. Sorry, basketball player. The vast majority of his earnings come from owning his likeness and owning his ability to put his name on things. And you can sell that away, right? Like the Beatles sold away their rights to their music, even though they made it. So just because you made it doesn't mean you own it. You can sell those rights and you can buy them as well. But usually you got to have, a fair amount of money to do that. So in this world, since what you do hourly doesn't scale, you need to own things. You need to own businesses, real estate, intellectual property, patents, or else you don't have any future of becoming a billionaire. I can't think of a single human being that has ever become a billionaire in the history of mankind that's done it by the hour. It just doesn't exist. So work hourly, get your business started, save up. You're going to use that money to get your inventory, to get your stock, to buy yourself some more time, right? And then, retail only goes so far. Once you bought your freedom in retail, then you can go into things that scale, things that have network effect, things that are,
You already know what
next
time it
level.
is.
Crypto in the morning,
Crypto in the morning.
crypto in the morning,
Waiting on phone.
crypto in the morning, crypto in the morning,
Ready to take notes.
crypto in the morning,
Crypto in the morning.
crypto in the morning,
Waiting on phone.
crypto in the morning.
I guess that's just not.
You already know what time it is.
Crypto in the morning,
Crypto in the morning.
crypto in the morning,
Waiting on phone.
crypto in the morning, crypto in the morning,
Ready to take notes.
crypto in the morning,
Crypto in the morning.
crypto in the morning,
Waiting on phone.
crypto in the morning, crypto in the morning.
Ready to take notes.
Smoking a blunt on my way to the gym. 11 a.m. and I'm already tuned in. Got me some hacks and I'm making a stake. Bought me some heads on, I'm making it rain. Pay me some maxi and that's just in case. Gym ready sent me to show you the way.
D5 Pro. Yeah.
Crypto in the morning.